welcome to Darth Souls. It's episode number 40. Once you're over the hill, you pick up speed. Something to do with either rolling down a hill or taking drugs. Anyway, I'm joined today by Keza McDonald.
Hello.
And Quinton Smith.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. And what a lovely day it is. The sun's been in the sky. Video games have been flying through the trees and picking up small nuts from the ground. I've been playing Bloodborne.
That was beautiful. Sorry, let's go back. Just had to drop that in. We'll go back to Bloodborne.
Bloodborne.
I've also been playing Bloodborne.
I've not been playing Bloodborne because
Twins.
I have run out of steam with it. And I feel like I'm the first person in the world, apparently, for this to happen to. I'll get this out of the way so you guys can really excitedly talk. But I encountered a couple of things that really messed up my character and my sense of involvement with the game. I got a really cool sword that required a lot of blood tinge, which is the stat usually used for guns.
Blood ting. I think it's called.
Blood ting. I got that. I've got lots of that blood ting now. And no, that doesn't feel right to say. So I invested really heavily getting this really cool sword, all the blood ting, and then it's an awful sword. And I looked online and there were loads of people going, oh yeah, this sword's bad. But
that's very unlucky.
It's kind of annoying, and it's led me actually down a rabbit hole of kind of looking at Bloodborne. I still love it. It's still obviously beautiful game, masterfully crafted. But do you remember how in Demon Souls, like that old attitude of like, you can use any weapon and it's good.
Yeah.
You can use a bow and it's good. Sword and shield, good. Double-handed weapon, good. You can use magic, good. You can be a priest, good. In Bloodborne, I have no problem whatsoever with you're using a gun and a weapon in your other hand. Great. I have no problem with the transformable weapons. But the magic feels not great. The investing in blood ting doesn't feel quite great. I feel like it's possible to make mistakes with character creation, which isn't something I got from the other two games.
It very much forces you down one path of fighting, which is be aggressive. And it's interesting because people who I know who've played Souls games tend to be quite defensive. With Souls, the general instinct is to walk into a room with shield up, right? Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people who got, especially demons, which was vulnerable to this, they got through the whole of demons by standing very far away from everything and firing spells. They kind of fixed that in Dark.
I don't know if it's necessarily a problem either.
No, it's not. It's just different ways to play it.
Yeah, who don't necessarily enjoy action games.
If you happen to be a Souls player who does like naked running around with a big sword and lots of rolling, then Bloodborne is very easy to get into. If you were a Souls player who was in Havel's armor with, a massive shield and a big club, then getting into Bloodborne is considerably more difficult, I think. And I think you're right, it does make you do a certain style of gameplay which the Souls games didn't. But then it's different, isn't it?
I think it's just a bit it's difficult because it's not a Souls game, but it's come from like the DNA of the Souls games so much.
I think this is it.
It's much more thrilling than a Souls game.
It is. I think it's really good, but I feel like you're probably right in the fact that I have just naturally focused in just being strong and aggressive.
And I was doing that, and I was having a great time. And then the moment I veered towards being a bit alternative, which the other games let you do, I found myself encountering these like vestigial limbs that Bloodborne still has
you just don't need all the stats, like basically.
No.
I thought that once you got to New Game Plus, Blood Tinge and some of the other, and the Arcane and some of the other stats would just reveal themselves suddenly. And you get to the point where it was like, oh, this is what this is for. But so far, that's not happened to anyone that I know. Mm-hmm. Like, it seems that there really are just...
There's not much to do with them.
No. I mean, basically, your deck... I mean, I always used to be a dex build in Souls.
Which is one of the first of many errors I made with my character and found I categorically wasn't being rewarded for this thing that the game, in past games, had let you do.
Yeah, I mean, I run around with the Threaded Cane, which is a dex. It scales with your dex. I'm sorry, this is so nerdy. It scales with your skill stat.
I guess
and it's so fun. I love that whip. It's so fun. Everyone else is running around with the Ludwig's Kirkhammer, right? The Ludwig's whatever it is.
Ludwig's blade or the
That's right. Yeah, either one of those. So big, either great sword or hammer, and I'm just there with my whip, and I'm running up to people in PvP with like a cane, and they're looking at me like lol. With their huge hammer, and they take a swing, and I just get my whip out, and it's like, foo, foo, and they're flung off the end of something. It's fantastic. I love
fooled
it.
you. I fooled you twice.
Shame on you.
But I think that for just people who are sitting there going, "Oh, what is going on?" I think the way to explain it is that in previous stuff like Dark Souls, you could invest in dexterity, and then it would have like more advantages than just being good with certain weapon types. It would be like, you'd be better at like backstabbing, and you'd be better at all this other stuff. And there was a wider variety of weapons to play with, and there was a wider variety of play styles that it was well kind of tuned for. Bloodborne, again, I think it feels like, I wonder if it's maybe that, because the thing I forget is that the combat system in Bloodborne is really nice.
So good.
And I wonder if maybe they started building it with the building blocks of like Dark Souls, Demon Souls, and then they started working on the combat system, and they just realised they weren't going to have time to do it for all of these different styles and make it
honestly,
good.
the only, I mean, there is one combat style in Bloodborne.
Yeah.
And it's just, and I find it really thrilling and exhausting actually. Like the adrenaline's too much. Like when I'm playing Bloodborne, I'm right on edge of everything, and the way I play these games, I tend to get quite into them, like a lot of people, and I find it exhausting to play for too long because it's just on a minute-to-minute, second-to-second gameplay level. It's so much more thrilling than Souls combat to me.
Yeah,
I don't think it is.
The other thing that pushed me, I think, away from it to the point where I'm at now, I think I'm about 3/4, maybe 80% of the way through, and I just can't be asked to finish it. Is that
I think I'm at the same stage.
Yeah,
but I can be asked. I will get there.
I'm sure you will. But the it's funny because it's so tense and you're so cautious, and then you have these moments of great excitement and elation as you run in and whip the shit out of the monsters, and then you're cautious again. And the moment I start losing patience with any Souls game, and as much as I do love them, as soon as I lose that patience, that like, okay, I just want this game to be over now, and I start running faster, I start dying more, I start having less of an interest in the combat, and the entire game falls apart because it requires, just very, very, very cautious play.
Yeah.
I remember ages back you asked if I wanted to review the PC release of Dark Souls, but
definitive edition of
I can think of nothing worse now than having to get through these games, which require you go through them slowly.
I mean, Matt and I
we've
talked about this before on
yeah.
the podcast, but the Dark Souls review experience ruined Dark Souls for me. I mean, it was also amazing. Like, it was amazing because we were the first people to be experiencing it, but it was fucking broken, and we had no help, and it was
no
just
idea what we were doing.
No idea what we were doing, and the humanity, the system wasn't really in place yet, so we didn't know how to summon, and we were all just working it out, and it was like playing a Souls game in a normal way, except with no option of help from anyone. We were just all relying on each other, and it was painful. I think one person in the entire world that I'm aware of managed to get past Ornstein and Smaug in Dark Souls before review. Because, it was just, I mean, it wasn't balanced quite properly. And
no, they made it a lot easier after launch. Because I think they probably realised that reviewers hadn't got very far.
Basically, the cursing used to stack. Like now, when you get cursed in Dark Souls, right, you can go down to a quarter of your health bar. It used to stack, so it would go down to then an eighth. And then at one point, I had a 16th of a fucking health bar. I'm down in Ashen Lake, like in tears, in front of this big dragon who lives in Ashen Lake. I'm down in Ashen Lake trying to get up that tree.
Oh, that
back
bloody
to the
tree.
And the basilisk is just dropping on me, and I'm at a 16th of a health bar, and nothing. I get hit once and I die, and I nearly had to restart the whole game. I had like one kind of...
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so trying to review a Souls game, ever since I've been like, I refused to even touch a Souls game ever before launch because it did kind of ruin it. It took me like a year and a half after Dark Souls came out before I finished it. Because I was so like traumatized by it.
It did sort of define the way I play those games, because it was the first time I played them. I hadn't played Demon Souls before. I dabbled in Demon Souls, but not very long.
Demon Dabbler.
Demon Dabbler. But it defined how I play them. And actually, when I played Dark Souls 2, I actually did a lot more summoning, and I did a lot more like calling people in to fight boss fights. Mainly because a lot of the boss fights in that were cheap and annoying, and I kind of got a bit fed up with it and wanted to get through it. But I still felt bad about doing that. And interesting with Bloodborne now, I think it's like, because I was like raised in the fires of you do it on your own and you just don't do any of that stuff. And also for the same reason, I've never had any interest in the multiplayer, like the actual PvP. Like, PvP stuff. I've never cared about it because in my mind, like when I was playing through Dark Souls, that just wasn't a part of it.
See, for Demons, for me, that was like half the game. And
Demons did require a lot,
yeah,
like summoning in general.
Yeah, but the thing is, it encouraged. I mean, all the Souls games do this. They're built to encourage cooperation, whether that's physically through getting someone into your game or through the messages or whatever. It's a communal experience. The game. So I played Demons on Japanese servers with lovely Japanese people. Had a great time, and then when it came out in America, I imported it and got it, and just got griefed constantly. I was like, "You're not doing it right."
I like the griefing though. I like the griefing, especially with the fake messages and stuff.
That's so good.
That's a good griefing, but bad griefing, like there was this bug in the Tower of Latria, I think, somewhere, where basically if you were a barbarian and you had that headbutt move, you could just headbutt people off the steps and catch them in a constant stagger until they were just like forced to go off the edge of the steps. That happened about 6 times in Tower of Latria when I was playing Demons on the... Oh, it was annoying.
It does...
That's bad griefing. It's not even funny.
All of what we're talking about with Bloodborne kind of like seeming like this entirely robust entity and then actually coming apart a tiny bit if you explore in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Reminds me exactly of our experience of Destiny, now I come to think of it. The only 2 games I've got on the PS4 are these glorious, beautiful experiences that are so polished, and then you kind of poke them and you realise that there is just secretly secretly some unfinished stuff in the design.
But we got to say that actually the great thing about Bloodborne is that there's so much of the design elsewhere just really nails stuff which the earlier games just didn't.
I feel like it's well, I still prefer the reason I prefer Dark. Like I'll always love Demon Souls because it was my thing, but like the reason I still slightly prefer Demons and Dark is because I prefer dark fantasy to horror. I'm having real trouble with the horror aspects and imagery. It's honestly giving me really bad nightmares.
Really?
I'm a sensitive soul. Yeah. The other week when I was playing it for the first time, I managed about like 3 or 4 hours of it, and I couldn't sleep. I just had horrible stress nightmares all night with just dreadful. Like, those messengers used to freak me out. I've got used to them now.
Oh,
but the messenger faces were like in my head, and I just it's terrible.
It's
actually
funny.
my partner in the middle of the night because he got it. He took a week off work to play it, and I couldn't at that point. So he was sitting in the hall playing it. He played it all in like 7 days, and he spent like 110 hours in 7 days. It was crazy. And at one point in the middle of the night, he kind of shook me awake in the middle of the night. I'm like, what is it? He's like, the arena, you gotta stand to the other end of the arena. If you pick him off one by one, then you gotta get the fireball guy. And I was like, are you asleep? Are you talking to me about Bloodborne boss strategies and you're asleep? And
Bloodborne spoilers.
And then he just kind of laid his head back down and I'm like, yep, you weren't awake for any of that.
Wow.
Shook me awake in a
Spoiling
conversation.
Bloodborne in his sleep.
I know, it was great.
I've actually been loving the art design. I don't find it a horror game because I just feel too empowered a lot of the time. I think it has moments of great horror where you encounter a monster for the first time.
I do feel too empowered now, actually. That's a good thing because the load times, they've apparently patched out today, but the load times were a ball ache. And actually, I would say to anyone, if you're trying to play Bloodborne, do keep going. It's probably easier now, actually, because of the load times are a lot better. It won't be such a pain. But I was dying so much at the start. But once I got the hang of it, and once I got some decent weapons,
So
it's like, I don't know, I feel like a lot more powerful. And actually, I'm not cruising through the game, but I'm like not struggling that much. But it's still scary. I've set myself 2 rules. I'll tell you my 2 rules for playing Bloodborne. One is I'm going to try and do the whole thing without summoning anyone else. I'm trying to do it all on my own.
Oh, but
No,
dude, you've got to engage with the multiplayer. You're
No,
not
I like it.
experiencing the whole. That's fine. It's your
I
decision.
like the feeling of it just
It's
being
wrong, it's your
me
decision.
and them. And I don't know, if I get really stuck, I'll do it, but I'm just trying to see how far I can get. And the second thing is I'm playing it all with headphones. I'm playing it all with surround sound
is a
headphones.
great idea.
Nope, too scary.
I didn't
I
realize.
play it with Boards of Canada on Spotify.
No, I've heard people doing this, and I think that really ruins it.
I can't handle it. It's too tense otherwise.
No, that's fair. I mean, it is horribly intense, and the sound mix in that game is incredibly well done, but it does make me jump out of my skin on quite a constant basis.
The
If
sound
it
is so
were
good.
any other game, I'd have given up because it's too scary for me. But so this is the beauty of a Miyazaki game, right? What you're talking about, feeling more powerful, feeling less afraid, that dovetails so beautifully with the theme of the game. Like, do you know the
Oh
story
yeah,
of
yeah,
Bloodborne?
yeah.
Not
Like-
completely, yeah.
Well, I mean, should I do this? Is this a huge spoiler?
I guess so.
Probably is.
I'll very briefly say that basically the story of Bloodborne involves people not being scared of things they ought to be scared of, right? That's basically the story, and then that goes horribly wrong for people. That's the underlying thing. That's pretty. I mean, even if you've been to Old Yarnum once, then you know that. It's much more complicated. But the thing is that you, as the player, go through the same thematic journey where you start off terrified, and you get to the point where you're actually really enjoying and reveling in the blood and in the stuff, and you get to the point where you're not as scared of it as you should be, and then. I just think it's so beautiful the way that the game makes you into the subject of its own story. It's so good, and then when you start diving into what the story means and stuff, you realise that you've gone along the same journey as the people who are supposedly in the game and the other hunters that you meet, and you yourself in real life have gone through that, and it's no other game has ever done that.
Oh, a
to
few
me.
games have done that exact twist.
I don't know, like, I've not found that anyone's actually affected me, bro. Because the thing is, it's usually so obvious, isn't it? Like in Far Cry 3.
I could definitely name a couple of very well-known indie games where that is the exact twist.
Oh, yeah, alright, fair enough.
But
There are some.
Something what I've
I
been
find
really
it very effective personally in Bloodborne.
it's a well-picked. I'd not call it a trope, but I think it's a well-picked story for Bloodborne to take. But I think you're totally right about the sound design. But for me, what's been twisting my nips is the art. Like, it's not a fantasy world we've been to before. That's all I really need from a game, because it's not steampunk, it's not fantasy, it's this like Victoriana.
Yeah.
It's kind of like The Order, and it's just a new place. Like, you go to, I don't know, the places in it, like whether it's the college or the city of Yharnam or the forest, where like the ladies are
Yeah.
Like, it's,
oh my god,
that-
Charnel Lane.
I wasn't going to say
all the
anything,
single
but
ladies. All the single ladies.
so many single ladies in that area having a great time, doing it for themselves.
Yeah.
And
independent
but
ladies
like
like Beyonce.
you go to these areas and it's just the texture work is new, the ideas are new.
Yeah.
It's just it feels fresh.
The thing that I'm actually being blown away with is when I was playing Dark Souls, I found it frustrating sometimes because you'd hit a wall and you'd just be like, I can't do this boss. And then you'd have this sense of not really knowing what else you could do. And the thing about Dark Souls is there always was something else you could do. There was always another place you could be. But the problem was there was usually only ever about 2 different places you could
That's what I found with
be going.
Bloodborne.
No, Bloodborne is way more open.
I don't know, man. I've almost finished it, and there are pretty much 2 areas I should be exploring at any given point.
I'm sure it will, towards an end, it will get to a point where it's like, okay, there's only a few more things. But to begin with, like, there's so many things. Like, when I got to the Blood-Starved Beast for the first time, I was like, oh, this is too hard. And I was like, oh, well, there's that gate at the cathedral I can open.
Yeah, those are the 2 ways.
No, but then, like, once I got through that gate, there was then, like, a boss I could fight, or I could go down to the right, or I could go down to the left, and I didn't go to the place with all the single ladies for ages. I could have gone ages ago. And then even then, like I know at the moment I've still got some more stuff to do there. I've still got some more stuff to do back somewhere else. And then I was like, randomly, I was like, oh, well, before I go to the next place I'm supposed to go to, I'll go and explore around. And then I discovered randomly when I was just going, oh, I wonder what's down there.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
And then found the doors that opened up to like an underground forest, like,
yeah,
and full of fucking snakes. And it's just like, the problem is, I haven't felt lost. I've always felt like whenever I go, oh, I wonder what's over there, and I just go over there, and I always expected to do that thing of being like, oh, it's just a cave with one little treasure in it down that way. But then I go down that way, and it's either a shortcut back to somewhere else I've already been, or it's just this massive new place.
I feel that one thing that's missing from Bloodborne is not necessarily a bad thing, but it doesn't have the kind of sense of humour that Souls sometimes has when it tries to trap. Like, Bloodborne is very serious. You know.
Oh no, there was one bit actually that made me properly laugh out loud, and it was when I discovered a guy who was a very, very. It was the sort of thing where you see this thing and you're like, you really think it's a monster, and then you approach it very, very slowly, and it won't lock onto it. And then I'm like, even until I'm like a few feet away from it, I'm still walking like super slowly, ready to like fight. And then I like talk to this guy who's not a monster, but he looks like a monster, and he just goes, "Oh, God, you terrified me. There's monsters around here, you know." Yeah. And it's just like,
that's good.
It was brilliantly funny. I'm just being like, yeah, you know, exactly.
There's nothing like the mimic chests though. You know, like for me, I still can't get out of the habit of hitting.
They weren't scared. They weren't funny. They were terrifying.
But they're hilarious though. It's like, you think it's a chest, and then it's not a chest. It's slapstick.
That's the scariest thing in all of Dark Souls.
It's not scary. It's
terrifying.
I don't find them scary.
I've never
I don't think anyone's.
Has one ever killed you?
No, I've had a problem with them.
They have the single grossest, like it's Last of Us level disgusting.
I did actually see a YouTube video of someone getting.
When it happens to you and you forget, it happened to me when I was doing when we did the Dark Souls 2 Pantsman run through for charity with Bratters. Bratters had gone to the toilet or to get tea, I can't remember, and I forgot that there was one of the chests which was a mimic chest, and I just forgot it was a mimic chest, and I went to open it and it just did that thing of just eating you and spitting you out, and then it was just like the horror of it.
Gosh. I just thought they were funny.
No.
With their big lolly tongues.
No, you see, they're funny once they're moving around.
When they're up and around, yeah.
But when they first get you, it's the fact that they get you and they take you down to hardly any health, or they just outright kill you because they do a huge amount of damage. So they mess you up, and then suddenly you like just want to run away, and your instinct is just like, I need to get away from this. And then, oh shit, it's like got like 7 foot long legs, and it's like this gangly thing, and that's like the one thing you don't want is something that can chase you. And then it's like, oh, it can chase you, and it's not actually very dangerous at that point, but the damage is already done in terms of making you really scared. Oh.
That's strange. I was scared by Dark Souls, but not like I'm scared by Bloodborne. Like Bloodborne I find disturbing. You know, Dark Souls is scary, but Bloodborne I find really, in a good way, like I think it's disturbing on lots of really interesting levels. But even just visually, I find like some of the blood's too much and all this kind of
honestly,
thing.
like my favourite thing about Bloodborne is seeing a new enemy, then hanging back, kiting it for a while, and just looking at what the artists and the animators have done with it, because they're all just so wrong. They're never really scary because you have one means of interacting with them, which is hitting them in the head till they die. Like if Bloodborne had enemies you couldn't kill, it might qualify as a horror game for me, but it's like everything in that game is meant to die by your hand, so it's only ever like an obstacle.
But on the other hand, everything in that game is trying to kill you and can.
Yeah, but it's still a game, you know. It's still structured that like you are supposed to kill everything except for the bosses, which you know you're going to die by because they're a boss and you can't leave.
I think it handles a bunch of stuff really well. I like the way that you can. There's like. They've kind of made it so going away and grinding up a little bit and collecting some, some like blood souls or whatever, so you can level up your character. In Souls, that always just felt cheap because it just felt like you knew what you were doing. You were just purposefully repeating something.
You can always be torn to shreds by a dog in Bloodborne, no matter how good you are, how
high
level you are.
It's more that like because you need blood vials because it has that thing of being like
you do need to go back. Anyway.
So it means that actually it's not a bad idea when you run out to just go back to an earlier area. But what I like
stuff changes as well. They make things change.
Things change. So you go back to old areas, things aren't the same. Sometimes it catches you out really nasty surprises of things that have changed.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm not going to spoil it.
We're thinking the same thing.
Yeah, but Jesus Christ, that's the most frightening thing that a game has ever done to me. I would say actually, if you are intrigued by this, but you're probably not going to play Bloodborne, my series I'm doing at the moment, which is kind of a weekly series of me playing through Bloodborne. It's not like a let's play. It's like little clips of me doing stuff and talking about how I'm getting on. Is basically just cataloguing my very slow decline into madness and crying because it's a horrible, frightening game. I'd recommend watching it. It's pretty entertaining, even if you're not going to play the game. But yeah, it's just horrible, and it does so many horrible things to you. But I like that when you go back to the earlier levels to collect like some potions and stuff so you can continue with the game, you do go, oh, I didn't go down there. And it's actually, like backtracking is much more richly rewarded. There's so many little things that you miss, and whenever you go back to an old area, you find something that you didn't notice before, even if it's a shortcut or a new thing. It's a world that really rewards exploration in a way that Souls games didn't do as well in the past. And I also like the fact that it doesn't have the whole, obtuse thing of being like, oh, you have to get more potion slots and then upgrade your potions. It's just like you have 20 potions. And
I think it's a very stripped down combat system, ultimately. It's very... the regain system, when you get hit, you can regain your health by just getting in there. It encourages, and there's a fantastic quote in the one and only pathetic wooden shield that you find in the game.
Yeah.
And it says in the item description, shields are nice, but not when they engender passivity. And like, that is like, because the one problem that Souls had is that it, I'm guilty of this as anyone, but you can become a very passive player of it.
Yeah.
And Bloodborne just does not allow that. It forces you to engage, which I really, really like. I really like it. I think it's so good. But it's so frightening.
It is,
I wish it wasn't so scary. Well, no, I don't wish it wasn't so scary. I just wish I wasn't such a complete wimp.
It's terrifying, and it is, but it does have those moments. I think my favourite thing about it, though, actually, is that it's a lot more frugal with the moments when it really dicks on you, just because it can.
Yeah, I mean, it does it. Like, there's no Sen's Fortress in it.
No.
I was trying to explain to someone the difference between like Souls and Bloodborne thematically, and for me, it's Sen's Fortress. Like, it doesn't ever do that to you. Like, everything feels more real in Bloodborne as well. It feels like it may actually have happened.
Why don't you explain Sen's Fortress for the people who have not been lucky enough to experience that particular level?
Sen's Fortress is a bit about, just before about the halfway point of Dark Souls, where it is just a huge, great, booby-trapped castle, right?
It is like a castle from a Scooby-Doo cartoon.
It is, yeah.
Like this, with the swinging guillotines.
The first thing you see is a big bridge with swinging sides going back and forth, and you have to dodge past them. And of course, there's an enemy at the end who throws things at you. And then the thing is, the higher up you get, those swinging sides, there's more of them, and the bridge becomes tiny.
Oh, yeah,
and it's just like,
that.
And you get to the top, and the bridge is like a centimetre wide, and there's 20 blades and like 3 magic guys, and you're like, oh, come on.
It is that thing of...
And it is funny, though, when you die, it's like, oh, God. And also there's traps everywhere, like in that, there's, you step on something, you hear a creak, and you're like, oh, and then you get hit by 5 arrows, and that doesn't happen in Bloodborne ever. It feels much more tense and much
There's
more,
a lovely
real.
trap in Bloodborne which got me, because I did the traditional thing of setting off a trap and then running back to the place where I thought I'd be safe, because
I know the one you're talking
about. Is it in the
about.
Forbidden Forest?
I can't remember exactly where it was, but it was great, because it just basically dicks on you. It's like, you thought you were going to be safe there, but you're not safe there. And in fact, that's the one place where you're not safe.
The thing about that thematically, like everybody in the Forbidden, where it was, they're all trying to protect themselves against what's trying to get in. So all those traps made sense. Whereas in Dark Souls, it's like, these are just here to stop you from getting to the top of this tower, because it's funny.
I don't know, just the pacing of it's really fantastic as well. When you get to Old Yarnum and there's a crazy hunter like shouting at you saying, don't come here,
man.
It's like every time I enter a new area, it's not just being like, oh, this is a new area. It's like, it really feels like,
I've become really
where
obsessed
am I?
with the lore of it as well.
See, I haven't touched that yet because I'm not that far. I've just killed the Witches of Yarnum.
Okay.
and I'm wandering about
The Shadows.
now. No, I haven't done the Shadows yet.
The Witch.
Yeah. So I haven't got that far. I don't know where I'm going next,
Oh man,
in fact.
I had it slightly spoiled for me because we had an article on Kotaku from Rich Stanton, who's like one of the Souls experts of all time. He's wonderful. And he wrote, basically, he pieced together Bloodborne's story and lore from my own descriptions and from what happened. And he just pieced the whole thing together, like 3,500 words, like this is what is actually going on in Bloodborne. And so I had to edit that and I had it slightly spoiled for me. But I actually find that it's greatly enriched my enjoyment of the game, knowing thematically what's going on when I'm doing. Well, I'm like that though. I like that kind of thing. So I didn't feel like I was spoiled. I actually feel like it's enriched my enjoyment of the game. But I think if you're playing Bloodborne, or if you finished it, definitely go have a peek at that article or a bunch of other lore stuff, because it really, for me, it just really heightens everything in that game's working towards these very specific thematic things, and it's just, I just love it. It's really good.
I have always been slightly bugged by the fandom around the Souls game of trying to piece together, if only we knew what was in Miyazaki's head, because those stories are not complete. They're not meant to be complete.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's what makes them so good, though.
It's what makes...
And I think people who appreciate Souls lore are the kind of people who appreciate ambiguity.
I'm maybe, or when I read these articles or see these YouTube videos, sometimes I look at it and it's also people saying that, like, more willing to make leaps of logic when that stuff isn't necessarily there in the game. It's like, oh, of course, A leads to B because that's what makes sense. When
this
the
conspiracy theory.
Yes, when does it, like, the conspiracy theories are sometimes indistinguishable from what the designers actually intended.
I thought that particularly with Dark Souls 2, where I completed it and thought, and then sat and watched it's like 25 minutes worth of VatiVidya videos, which are great.
VatiVidya is really good.
Of him like explaining what he thought the story of Dark Souls 2 was and what the lore was. And after watching that, thought, yeah, that makes sense. That's fantastic. But I have to remind myself that it's like, no, that's Vati's story.
This is where it gets this is where I think like games press in particular is in a really interesting place, because we've always wanted our games to be art, games to have meaning, and games to be rich, deep experiences, and yet we need to develop the critical language to be able to judge these pieces of art as like art, right? So like I think the games press sometimes has difficulty distinguishing from something like, for example, Braid, which I think is open-ended and obviously an incomplete story, but is okay, and you can draw your own interpretations from that, versus games that are just, I'm not saying the Souls games are this, but I guess sometimes games might be unfinished, or like in an enormous 300-person dev team where one person doesn't necessarily have control of the
Miyazaki
creative
does have
vision they
control
need.
of everything.
Yes.
He literally sits with every single character.
Yes, but I'm not entirely...
He's one of the only auteurs left. Like, if you ever see... Oh man, I wish I could just watch him work for a month. But I do basically love Miyazaki.
But I mean, if this is the case... Like, I mean, you played Dark Souls 2. It's clear that...
Dark Souls 2 wasn't Miyazaki.
No,
wasn't. He was busy making Bloodborne.
I don't know.
That's why Dark Souls 2 sucks.
I don't know, man.
If
If you're an auteur with creative control over an IP, I don't think you necessarily let that go, especially when it's internally.
He had to. It was basically he was making Bloodborne, right? And Namco Bandai owned Souls, and Namco Bandai were like, we want another Souls, and that ended up happening with. I mean, Miyazaki wasn't like completely uninvolved, but he certainly wasn't sitting by the. And you can tell with Dark Souls 2, you can tell in everything about that game that there wasn't that kind of authorial vision. And the thing that's interesting is when you get to the DLC of Dark Souls 2, it's like the team finally learned Souls, because I think the DLC for that game is better than anything in the actual game, and you can see
I've heard. Yeah,
they're like learning Souls as they go along, and by the time they get to the DLC, they've kind of got it. You know, if they had Miyazaki sitting there, they would have been a very different game. But
I've got to say though, actually, one of the things that I don't particularly get on with is the fact that all of the lore and all of the story for these games, apart from in Bloodborne, which does actually, I like the fact that it does actually like feed you, like even if it's a very light story, it actually gives you some just for people who play it. But so much of the stuff in Dark Souls and Demon Souls was like written in item descriptions.
Yeah.
So you have to just sit and read all that. And I was like, that's
Bloodborne's
not...
better, I think, in that respect. Because it makes you feel more involved with the world. Like, I didn't feel really connected to, in that way, in the way that I feel connected to Bloodborne, having, played it and also looked into what went on there. I feel more connected to like the human story of it. Like, Dark Souls had a very kind of esoteric, dark fantasy, like very weird, not very human story at all. Whereas Bloodborne has a story about actual people and what happened to them, which I think is...
That is true.
A bit better.
I do think it's an absolutely insane restriction to have placed on a writing team of having to tell a story like 90% through the descriptions of things the character can pick up. Not because I mean, isn't that ridiculous? Especially when the character can only pick up things that are useful in fights. Like an entire story told through swords, shields, potions, and what the writing team are able to fill in those 2 tiny paragraphs.
Oh,
in
be
their
fair,
buckets.
Bloodborne has at least 6 small bits of text.
That is true. Characters who are being willfully mad when they describe them as well.
But the item descriptions, I will regularly.
I
after I've been
read
playing
the
through-
item descriptions of everything in Bloodborne. I think that
Love
writing
it.
is absolutely fantastic.
There's that bit when you get like a big man, not a madman's knowledge, but one of the souls, like the cold blood, right? You get a really big one. It's like, this artifact comes from mind teetering on the very brink, but then has a sane mind ever produced anything of true significance?
That's Madman's knowledge, yeah, the thing that you use to increase your insight.
Miyazaki! So good. Love it. I do fangirl out a bit about Miyazaki.
You know what? I think
It is cool. I mean, even stuff like, the fact that you have this thing called Madman's Knowledge, and it gives
And it's
you...
always in really funny places, like on
Yeah.
a beam.
It's often in really dark. It's always in people's bodies. And
Yeah.
It's always often in very dark places. And I've noticed what's really lovely about it is there are areas where you get lots of Madman's Knowledge. Often ones that are like really harrowing or really weird places. This
Yeah.
idea that people have died with too much knowledge in their mind, and they've left behind this fragment that you can take and then add to yourself.
The insight.
In fact, they call it insight. It's like you're just becoming somebody else who knows too much about
And the fact
world.
that the difficulty stacks with insight, and the fact that it's
Loads of stuff happens, and I wouldn't even want to spoil that because I don't know much about it, and I'm enjoying just going along and just like I've just ramped it up. I've just eaten all of it, and I'm just like, let's have as much madness as possible and see what happens. It's a great game, it really is, and I think it's a lot more accessible than Souls because of the fact that there is only one playstyle in the way. Like if you're a Souls veteran, that's a bit of a disappointment, but actually it means if you're just somebody who plays action games, you can just get stuck into it.
You don't have to worry so much about upgrading things in different paths and all that kind of thing. It doesn't really happen.
And there are less weapons. It's not like in Souls when it's like,
There's fewer
you want to
choices.
do a speed run through to this bit so you can get this weapon and then just upgrade that. Even the fact that it's quite liberal with like the upgrade stuff that you need to upgrade weapons, so you can happily be upgrading 2 or 3 weapons at once just from what you're collecting everywhere. It's just in many ways, like, I mean, obviously there are exceptions in the fact that it led Quinns to get loads of blood tinge. But generally speaking, especially in the early stages, it just does seem to nudge you towards going, just have some more strength in dex. Go on, put some more strength in dex in, like just making sure that you're not going to go too far off piste. But no, it's very cool. I'm looking forward to playing more of it because I've heard that in the latter half of the game it just completely goes off the rocker.
I'm very near the end now, and unfortunately the last area is horrifying. It's too much for me, actually.
I think
So
it's going to
struggling
frame
a
me
bit.
because my headphones rule is difficult sometimes, and there are sections of my Bloodborne Diaries series where I'm either ill or quite hungover, and it's like it's just too much.
And honestly, I recommend, if you really can't deal with it, recommend Boards of Canada to all listeners who just can't quite deal with the tension. It does help.
If you listen, you can just hear the sound designer from Software crying audibly out from Japan.
Well, only after you've tried it a few times and it's too much. I would say
Sure. Once you've experienced it.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm going back to an area, like when I'm somewhere new, I don't put that on because I couldn't.
If we are done with Bloodborne chat, there's something I played that has amazing music recently that you mentioned before the podcast, which is Westerado, Cowboyana.
Westerados?
The Cowboyana is a mess off game, which is actually amazing. And
Westerados. Is this like
Westerados is a new indie release. It was initially funded by Adult Swim as a browser game, and it was popular enough that the entire release was funded. You said you played this?
No, I only downloaded it.
Oh, okay.
Read a couple articles about it. It looked awesome, so I downloaded it.
Okay, I'll get to the music in a second then. This will be a very short conversation as I describe it. So it's a top-down Western game. You move around with like WASD, or hopefully a controller.
WASD.
Massively pixelated, and you're a little cowboy, and you have the ability to draw a gun and shoot and put it away. And that's your only means of interacting with the world, really. And then it is
You can
basically...
talk to.
Yes, we'll get to this. So it's Red Dead Redemption, basically. And you wander around and you talk to little pixelated people, and you're looking for the person who killed your dad. There are actually 4 characters, so you can play through the game in the same world with 4 different perspectives in what I presume
Are they
is the same
all
story.
looking for the person who killed their dad?
I don't know. I've only unlocked the first.
I'd like it if they were.
But this is the thing.
Turns out the same person killed all of them.
The thing that surprised me, I was like, okay, I'm down for a Western game where I shoot a gun, but it is massively, massively self-aware. Like all the yawls and like references to, are you the guy who had his dad killed? Like it's like a Western written by people who hate Westerns but love them at the same time.
Aw.
And then during any conversation, do you remember in Mass Effect how you can occasionally get renegade triggers to just hit someone? Or like Paragon triggers to stop someone from doing something in combat.
Yeah.
In this, you have one thing you can always do in combat, which is the button to draw your gun is always still available. So you just can be talking to anyone, and there's a nice little dialogue tree for every single one of the like dozens and dozens and dozens of NPCs in this beautiful pixelated world. But you can always, in the mid-conversation, just pull your gun. And they always do different things, and like you can play it really nicely. You can be a nice cowboy and do the nice questions,
And then pull your gun.
and then just pull your gun. But in my case, I entered a town, and like a woman says, your introduction to the system is a woman going, "Can you go to the saloon and get my drunk husband back?" So I go talk to the husband. He's like, "I'm not going home." You try talking to him again, and he goes, "I'm not going home." Try talking to him a third time, and you pull your gun, and he's like, "Whoa, I'll go home." And you walk him home. So you're like, "Oh, pulling your gun can have effects." And I go to the sheriff, who's a deadbeat, and I'm like, "Oh, this guy needs to put his act together. He's not doing anything." So I start talking to him, and I pull my gun, and he just goes, "Do you think anyone's going to miss me?" But you can still kill anybody. Like, and actually, this is the single thing that I'm in love with. You're looking for the guy who killed your dad, right? He's in the world somewhere. You don't know who he is, but your reward for doing quests isn't experience points or anything. You just get a hint about him. He wears this kind of hat. He has these trousers. He has this mask. So all you're trying to do, the whole purpose of the game is guess who, and you can kill anyone. So you just need to find the guy and kill him.
Everyone.
Well, if you're a prick, yeah.
It's like in original Fallout, I've heard when you go into a town and accidentally upset someone and you just end up in a shootout with the entire town by mistake, that can happen.
It's like I always say, if you want to make an omni omelette, you've got to break all of the eggs.
Every single egg in the West.
It's an omelette.
Are you like the guy who played Red Dead Redemption and killed horses for fun?
No, I didn't. Although
my horrible housemate did that to my horse.
I did have an exception in multiplayer. I was awful.
Oh, shooting
because I realised it was really funny to be riding along with your friends in tandem and then just turn around and shoot one of their horses in the head and they just fly off their horse. And if you did it like when they were going towards a cliff or a bridge, they just fly off a cliff. It's so funny.
So the last thing I'll say about Westerado, am I getting that right?
Westerados, I think.
Westerados.
I keep thinking
I keep thinking it's Westeros.
Yeah, same. I'm thinking I want a game which is like Westeros or Desperados.
Oh, I would play this game in Westeros where you can just stab anyone or draw your sword.
No, I'm just thinking it's like Game of Thrones, but everyone has 6 shooters.
Westeros, so
I really would love an open world Game of Thrones. Can you imagine? Like, if Witcher 3 was just a Game of Thrones game, I'd be so.
It's not
so
far off. Actually, I'll tell you what I've been playing.
Let me say the very last thing, because
yes.
the only reason I brought this up is the music. It's got like I think a 6-piece band, like so harmonica, violin, guitar, like all this stuff. So while it's pixel arty as anything, it's just actual band music. And it's those people playing throughout the whole game. Like they have God knows how many tracks for God knows how many areas, but like in the initial title sequence where it's like Westerados, designed by this person, art by this person, and then it lists the band. Like it lists all six musicians.
All their instruments.
And so it's like this guy's on harmonica, and you're like, oh, that's cool. And then I tell you what, you notice those instruments for the whole game. It's incredible. Just music put front and center in an indie game like that. Like it's really, really nice. Really
That's cool.
Nice.
Well, I was just thinking, because talking about like Westeros and all that stuff, I've been going back and playing some of The Witcher 2, which is a game which I played up until near the end of the first chapter of that game, like ages ago. And then I was on 360, and then I got it on PC again and played again. Did that classic thing that people do, up to the same point, and then stopped.
Did you at least do because there's that great pitched battle, and you can join either side?
Yeah.
Did you join the different side at least?
I didn't actually get to the... See, what I didn't remember is basically, it's not really a big spoiler, but at the end of the first act of The Witcher 2, you kill a big monster.
Oh, yes.
I'm really sorry if I've ruined that for you.
But in a game where you play a monster killer, you kill a monster.
Listen,
it is a really big monster.
I can just apologise. But no, it's a really big monster. But this time, I think because I've played it a bit before, I just jumped back into it to kill the monster. And what I did last time was I always quit after killing the monster, realising that actually...
It's like, that's the most exciting point of the game.
I think the problem is that in my head went, yeah, that's a good point to take a break now, and then never went back. Yeah. Failing to realise that actually if I just hung in for a little bit longer, after you kill the monster, when you expect it to all wrap up neatly, things kick off, and then you get a brand new hook that you get.
Yeah, immediately.
Yeah, and I never got the hook before.
But you know what? That game does the same thing that I was just saying about in Westerados, where your reward request is only ever just like pieces of a greater puzzle. I love in that first act of The Witcher 2, where you show up and then all you're doing is receiving information on how to kill this giant monster.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that in The Witcher 3, I hear.
Oh, yeah?
Which is good, like a lot of tracking. I've played like 5 hours of it, and there's a lot of tracking and finding info. And before you can even get there...
It's so much fun, because it means you have this task on the horizon. It's imagine, hypothetically, the equivalent thing in Bloodborne would, I guess, be if you are receiving clues about the boss you're about to fight.
That would be good.
Yeah, like if you, I don't know, so I ask you to imagine the first boss, if there were signs of that boss, if you were able to see it, if you're able to see perhaps glimpses of how it fights and stuff. before finally arriving on it. That would be a wonderful kind of evocative technique for a game to use.
But I know I'm super late to the table for criticism about The Witcher 2.
Criticism, not even just like, that game's pretty good.
It's pretty good, right? And I want to keep playing it because I'm kind of like, I'm enjoying it. But a couple of criticisms about it.
Here we go.
It really annoys me, and this is one of those weird things where I don't mind it when games don't take themselves seriously. But The Witcher 2 like often breaks its own reality.
Does it?
Yeah.
How?
There've been like 2 or 3 points where they've made explicit jokes about Lord of the Rings books.
Oh, really?
And it's like, the Lord of the Rings books don't exist in this world. It's a different world.
You should tell the developers that. You should write them a
And
letter.
I think it's like, it's clearly a thing that when the script writers are writing the script for the game, they thought, oh, this is pretty funny.
There's,
But it's
I
like
might
even
be
the
making this up, but I think the bard is like, yes, I'm the bard kind of thing, and it's like, well,
The books themselves.
I really don't like the
are-
voice actor for the Bard either, like the American voice actor. It's just like, it's a weird
he's
thing
very
of
annoying.
all the voice acting is pretty good, and then you've got Triss Merigold, who's like your love interest, and then the Bard, who are both like super squeaky clean Americans, and their voices just do not fit into the world at all. Everyone
Especially
else
a role with like a lot of racism and sort of like class inequality.
it's full of
Yeah.
regional accents from England and like Scotland, and then it's like, hey, the Witcher, how you doing with your quest?
Yeah.
And it's like, who the fuck are you,
it
mate?
is weird, yeah.
So much that I've been really tempted to put it in Polish with subtitles, just because I'm like, I don't want to hear your
Oh,
voice.
why haven't you done that? That would be. I played what was it called? Endless? No, not Endless Legend. I'm looking at Keza because I feel like you can help me out. Xbox game Endless Odyssey.
Lost
Oh,
Odyssey?
Lost Odyssey.
There we go.
I played Lost Odyssey in Italian and it was awesome because everyone looked weirdly tan and
Yeah,
Mediterranean.
he did very Mediterranean stuff.
Yeah.
I love that game.
But it made it drew me into the world. It was as if they were. This is lame. It was as if they were talking Elvish, and that tells you how much I know about Italian.
That's kind of why I liked playing The Witcher. I played the first Witcher with Polish with subtitles, and actually I need to do it in The Witcher 2 because it's a bit more work with reading, but actually it's just so much better.
It's the
I find it too distracting because I'm trying to work out the grammar of the language. You know, it's really annoying.
That's your fault for
That's-
speaking multiple.
Yeah, probably just that's probably a problem that's quite exclusive to you.
It does remind me though of it reminds me of the anime thing where you watch anime in Japanese and it seems so evocative and like wonderful and then there's a pinch point where you learn enough about Japanese and then you go, oh no, this is as sort of ridiculous
really
and over the top
banal, yeah.
as American voice acting. It's in another language so I don't notice and it just seems like they're all great. I can imagine
Yeah.
they're all
But one of
great.
the things I would say is like I'm really hoping that Witcher 3 like it's just a bit less shonky because I
What?
love.
Witcher 2 is so good.
Nah, it's a
At
bit
least
shonky.
yeah, that's probably because you're playing it about 6 years late.
Yeah, probably. But but no, I still think that like it looks fantastic. I'm playing it 6 years late, yes, but I'm playing it on a decent PC and it still looks gorgeous.
That's cool.
And a lot of it is still really good, but just sometimes, and I think it's just to do with the amount of content. Sometimes the way stories are told in cutscenes, and it's just like all in engine. But sometimes just the execution of it can be a bit shonky. Like there's a bit where a significant character gets poisoned, and the way it was done was just like that was really weak. It was just the use of camera angles and stuff. You can tell it's one of those things where it just feels like it's a bit like there's an art to the world, but in terms of how things are like framed and stuff, and in terms of how things are like shown
In terms of
to you.
cutscenes and how the story. This is the same game which uses like women as transparent sex objects.
Yeah, and
there
it's
is an
like,
amount of like
it's like everyone has an identical bosom in that game. You know, I assume they all get them from the same shop. But it's this thing of like so it's like it's visually like on a fidelity level, on a graphical level, it's beautiful. But there's sometimes it feels like it's lacking a bit on an artistic front outside of just like visual fidelity. And I just think it's not bad because I get that in many, well, that's not an excuse for the identity bosoms, but in terms of the way that in terms of the way that the quests work, it's like there's so much stuff going on and it's so generous with how stuff happens. Like at the end of Act 1, you know, you get to make a choice between what you want to do. I made my decision and I wanted to go off with the people who are maybe seen as being the bad guys, but I kind of like the cut of their jib a bit more.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's categorically a world without bad guys. Everyone just has political views, which is really nice, and actually quite common in Eastern European fantasy, as I understand.
Yeah,
it.
but what I loved about it was that I then
Yes.
saved the game and I
Northern
loaded
European
it
too.
just because I realised that I then thought, well, actually, I want to just go and talk to that guy to see what the other option was, and then I did it, and it wasn't just another option. It was like the two were combined. You couldn't choose. You couldn't choose to do the mission and then not leave with them, but it actually had this full assassination mission where I got to kill a character who I really hated, and I had this weird thing of I then went and did this mission, killed this character, had this amazing little plot arc, and then loaded my game because I thought, well, I don't actually want to go with this guy.
I'm not sure.
But I just enjoyed doing it so much that it was like, wow. Like,
I've not encountered a game that's more like generous and financially insane than The Witcher 2 in terms of how the plot branches is and the sheer quantity of content you cannot see.
Yeah,
it's so.
It would never be made by a non-independent studio, put it that way.
Yeah.
I'm excited for The Witcher 3 though. I think
I'm so excited for it. I've got to finish Bloodborne before it comes out, otherwise Bloodborne will just hang in the balance for.
Well, that's why I'm trying to
6
play.
months.
I'm trying to get through The Witcher 2 because I sort of thought, actually, you know what? Like I missed Dragon Age Inquisition. All right, I missed it. It's never going to happen. It's dead. It's gone. I'll never play it.
That ship has sailed.
It's gone.
I was thinking I might go back when it has a load of DLC, but it doesn't seem to have had like a particular like resonance within the critical community.
I think it maybe came out at a time when a lot of stuff was out and everyone was tired.
Christmas. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And I
know a
don't
couple
know.
of people who spent 120 hours on it and who love it passionately. But
I've
they're
heard
mostly
it's,
people who don't work in games.
Yeah,
because there isn't time for that.
I've yet to hear the hook that says you can do this in Inquisition, and I'll go, oh shit.
I think the problem is it's all story stuff, and I think lots of people I've spoken to love it, but they don't want to tell me why because it's all to do with like
that is a problem.
Yeah.
It's all to do with the story, and I think that's a big problem for some games. I still haven't played it, and this is a part of the problem for it. But I think Brothers is one of those games, and I haven't played it.
Oh my god, you have
because
to
it's,
play Brothers.
play
I know,
Brothers.
it's the
Really
thing,
should play
but
Brothers.
all anyone
Really
tells
good.
me is you have to play it.
You have to play it, Matt.
I know, but that's why myself, like millions of other people, haven't played it because it's the difficulty. And I'm not saying it's good or wrong, but when you have a game where all you can say is
Okay,
you have
look,
to play
I'll sell you on it right. I'll sell you and all the people at home who haven't played Brothers because all they've heard is you have to play Brothers.
I've got it. I just haven't had a chance.
Here's why you should play it with no spoilers. It offers a particular kind of fantasy which I've not seen games do. It offers a very grim fairy tale fantasy. You're not some warrior killing goblins. You are progressing through a fantasy realm that is so magical and so strange that because you're very much the stereotypical protagonist in this story, because often your only means of interacting with this stuff is you're just kids. You creep past things, you get through things with blind luck, you fluke your way into situations where you categorically should not be, and still get out in one piece. It's incredibly exciting, and you have no idea what's around the next corner.
Yeah, that's the main thing I would say is that you just have no idea at any point what's going to happen next, and that's so rare.
Yeah,
it's
it's actually a lot of what's kind of pushing me away from Inquisition. Really, it's like I feel
like you might know what's going to happen.
No, I have no idea what's going to happen in this story. I know BioWare are very good at that, and this is going to sound dumb, I feel like I've seen all those textures and enemy designs before.
Well, I think if it is, the thing is, from the impression I get, the appeal of Inquisition is that it's got like really rich, really satisfying story, and I think that like it sounds like you're at a stage in terms of what you get from games now where you're not as interested in that, which is fair enough because like that stories are often better told elsewhere. I get that. But it's like, because I really like Pillars of Eternity, and that's another game I really want to go back to. But that wasn't enough for you, that like just having story stuff, and maybe it just wasn't your flavour.
No,
because you don't get
what?
on with Obsidian, do
I
you?
do not. Pillars of Eternity I did play, and I did really enjoy, and I like what
Sorry,
they
that
did.
was really long.
No, it's totally great. I feel like if I am playing a game for story, then that's great. I would love to play Inquisition for story. My problem, and I started feeling this a lot during Mass Effect 2 and 3, is why am I doing all this subpar shooting stuff again?
Yeah, that's the thing.
And like, I get that that's a really unfashionable opinion to have, but like, I love to pieces every single moment when I'm making decisions and running the ship. I forgot the name of it, which is bad.
Normandy?
The Normandy in Mass Effect, when I feel like a captain. It's incredible.
I love that.
But that's not what
spaceship.
you're doing for about, like what, 75% of Mass Effect? 75% of Mass Effect, you're running to and from quest vendors or you're in a fight.
That's why you put it on easy mode.
But you still have to go through that. Sorry,
did I tell either of you, I must have done this on the podcast before, I always forget, but what happened when I came back to Mass Effect 2, it was 80% finished, I had not played it for 3 years. And
80% is probably the suicide mission, isn't it?
it was basically before that, right?
Yeah, because I
And it was
remember.
like, yeah, it was before that, and I didn't play it for literally 3 years, and I thought, I better finish it off. I'm like 10% away from the end, I'll just finish it. And I loaded it up, and I was standing with 4 people I did not recognise in a corridor with a bunch of guys, and I'm like, we shoot these guys? All right, we're shooting these guys, and then like who's the woman with the gas masky?
Tia
Maria.
Tia Maria.
So Tia Maria was. I was in the mission. I was in the middle of her personal mission about something
That's
to
a
do with
good
her
mission
father.
as well.
Talia, is it?
Talia.
It was
No,
something.
no.
It's Tia Maria.
It's Tiara?
It was,
Tia Maria. Jesus Christ, come on.
It was something to do with her father, and I had no idea about any of it. I'd like forgotten all of it. And
Basically, you were like, Shepard had a stroke.
Yeah, and then we got back to Normandy. I'm like, who are all these people? And I was going around the room and just like, this is cool, there's another room in here. And everyone's like, what? I could imagine just everyone on the ship being like, what the fuck is wrong with Shepard today? And I was kind of going around, I couldn't remember who I'd slept with. I was like, did I sleep with you? Did I sleep with you? Did I brush you off? And there was that girl, Kelly, at the...
It's Kahlua.
At the Kahlua. There was that girl, Kahlua, at the deck, and she was like flirting really heavily with me, and I'm like, I must have slept with you. I'm pretty sure we must have slept. And it was like a really interesting experience going back with that Amnesia Shepard. It was so fun.
To get everyone on the ship to fill in a questionnaire. On a scale of 1 to 10.
Someone has infiltrated the ship. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much have you had sex with me?
On a scale of 1 to 10, did we bang?
It was great. I had
people
some
writing
fun.
Y in the box number.
Just being like, just all these people I didn't recognise in the middle of a really important story mission that had something to do with someone's deep familial past, and I was just like, okay, cool, let's go down this corridor. You want to hack that? Great.
That's why I feel really excited to be getting back into The Witcher 2 and getting past the bit that I've got up to loads of times, being like, there's more stuff.
So you've made the call now as to whether to join with the humans or the elves?
Yeah, now I'm in Dwarfy Dwarfland.
Oh, I didn't play that. I played with the humans.
And
because
it's two sides of the different
two sides of the
battle.
same battle. Yeah.
Which I went with the elves because I like the elves.
The human. What I really appreciate out of the history nerd alert. What I really appreciated about the war camp with the humans is a lot of the time with games like the Dragon Age is guilty of this. It's like you have one area which is like the camp where the army's set up before the battle and it's nice tents, and then maybe there's some soldiers over there. It's like there is no mind really put into the ungodly logistical effort it takes to have an army.
Yeah.
And The Witcher 2 actually nails it. If you side
all the lines and all the...
Yeah, if you side with
really
the humans, it's just endless muddy tents, and then there's the train of like civilians who obviously are just like merchants who travel with the army, selling them like, this was real. Obviously, armies in the medieval ages, traveled with a massive train of like prostitutes and people who would keep up gear and God knows what else.
Yeah.
And The Witcher 2 actually thought about what would it be like living with an army.
The Game of Thrones does that too.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it's pretty good on the whole, like depicting what actual war is like, because basically 2 books of the Game of Thrones books are just a war is going on. That's the whole, like, war is ravaging the whole.
Do you mean the books or the games?
The books.
Oh right, yeah.
The games don't do it.
I've read the books.
The books do it, and the TV show does it. The game hasn't done it yet. But yeah, I love that kind of, like there's almost a trench system in there. Practically in some of the Westeros battles going on, like there's all this shit going on.
Yeah,
it's crazy, it's enormous, and everything takes 3 months to get anywhere.
Oh god, speaking of which, I loved. I'm actually doing I've got this new video series called Cogwatch where I look at mechanics in detail, and
I like it. It's very good. You should watch it.
Oh, thanks. And people at home should watch it too.
Yes.
It's a new one on durability in the Long Dark going up tomorrow, and why durability works in that game and is a piece of shit in other games. But I'm doing my next one on Life is Strange, and generally like dilemmas which is this new hot mechanic that all games are using ever since like BioWare popularized it in KOTOR and Mass Effect. But Banner Saga has horrific decisions and representations of when you're leading your army from place to place.
Yeah.
Because all the characters in that, whoever you're controlling, have like, however many hundreds or thousands of men, and just really, really, really awful decisions you have to make on the road. And interesting decisions because there's often no correct answer. Like, do we leave these people behind? Like, yeah, we've got X many injured people and we're being chased. Do we leave them behind?
Banner Saga was great. Actually, I probably will make a video about the Banner Saga at some point because there is a sequel coming and it's an interesting game that's worth talking about. It is frustrating though because it does kind of fudge a lot of stuff, and the fact that what annoyed me most about the Banner Saga was just when I felt like I was actually getting really into it, it was over. And it kind of ends with a big cliffhanger, and I'm just like, I'm just into this.
Are they making a sequel?
They are. I got confirmed recently.
Okay. Yeah. Banner Saga is another example of a game where I was driven away by staggering, beautiful storytelling, character design, dialogue, decision making, and then a game that was attached because you have to have a game.
Yeah, and the problem is the game isn't actually that good.
Yeah.
And it just starts to fall apart a little bit when you start getting bored of the combat, it sort of ends. And also you realise that it's kind of annoying in the fact that you have this meta game of trying to keep up supplies and keep morale up and stuff. And just at the point at which you feel like you might start to see consequences for that going a bit shaky, the game ends.
Yeah.
And you just sort of feel like actually it's kind of done the job in the same way that the Walking Dead games do the job of making you feel like there are more like important things going on than you know about. But it gives you that sense of that kind of like sprawling sense of things, but then everything wraps up really quickly. I don't know, it's really good. I had a really weird bug in the Banner Saga actually, where one of the characters died in one of the little bits in between where I made a choice and it went wrong.
And they came back?
And I just lost the character.
Yeah.
But then like for some reason my iPad crashed or whatever, and then it did this weird thing where like I was back, like, I'd been on past that and then done some more stuff. And then ended up, like, being, like, back before that character had died. But...
weird.
But with all of my, like, equipment and all of my character roster of the bit when I was further ahead. So, man, it got this bit and it was like, hang on a minute, this is the bit where that guy dies. And I look in my roster of characters and I don't have him anymore. So it's like...
Oh, really?
So this character's being like, I'm going to stop this from happening. And you have the opportunity to go, no, don't do that. And I was like, what happens if I save his life here? And I saved his life and he still wasn't in my party. And it was like,
that's very weird.
But then it meant I got, like, it kind of made the game too easy because it kept giving me, like, rewards I'd already got. So just, like, doubling up on everything and being this is that thing of, like, almost a glitch of being like, you must take this magical sword, my son. You're like, cool. I'll put it with my other one.
Was it the bit... There's a decision in that game that I really like. It's just really simple, so incidental. It's not really talked about before or since. But it's where your treasure caravan falls off the cliff. Yeah. That is... I do want to... You played this?
No, I haven't played Banner Saga.
So I'll ask you the question as the game pitches it. I think you're going to go, oh, that's a bit good. So like, you have one of the carts in your endless train of carts is just the treasure and loot cart. It is massively protected. But the wheel slips. And it's going off a cliff, and it's rolling off a cliff. And one of the characters in your party, who is a giant, like he's enormous, grabs one of the handles of the cart, which ox pull, like it's a hell of a thing, with one hand, and grabs a tree with his other hand. So he's between the two, and you have 3 options to yell out, and it's like, Jesus Christ, let go to him. You can tell him to hang on and look for something to tie it with, or you can run over and help him pull. And anything other than saying, let go right now, he just goes sailing off the cliff with the treasure.
Oh, no.
And it's great.
You lose your giant and your treasure.
Yeah, no, it's all gone, but it's such a beautiful moment because, and this is what I love the Banner Saga for, often games that make you make decisions like, do you want to be this kind of leader or this kind of leader? Banner Saga allows you to just be a leader because part of being a leader is just making those calls and then living with it.
Yeah.
Because when the cart travels on after it says, you see him go off the cliff, and then the pit of your stomach sinks, and then the game shows you the cart traveling onwards, and you're just like, oh, God! And
I mean, I've got to say, like, I mean, that's like might be like sound like a major spoiler, but the thing about that game is it's like has a huge cast of characters, and you don't know what's going on. A lot of them, people die and people change all the time, and you're always jumping around between different groups. It's very Game of Thrones-esque, so it's like it really gives you a sense of like, and actually there are some fantastic little twists and turns in that I won't say anything about, but there were some brilliant bits in terms of like.
I don't consider that a spoiler. I consider God knows what else.
Does it So does it play out kind of in real time? Because one of the things I like about, say, Game of Thrones and The Witcher to an extent...
Having to make decisions quickly.
No. Yeah, well, no, the way it's like, the Martells are on the march, and then there's like 9 months before they get there. You know, in that 9-month period, a lot of stuff happens, and it doesn't just go, they're on the march, and then kind of fast forward.
Well, the way it works
Does the Banner Saga make you just actually properly go along with your army, or does it skip?
It does the Game of Thrones thing, Game of Thrones thing of having somebody being like, oh, we've got a long way to go. And then they'll have a fight, and they'll go, oh, we've still got a long way to go before we get there. And then it'll go, across the map. And then you'll have a story of some other people, and then next time you see those characters. But it's interesting in how it does it, because at first you sort of think, oh, it's just going to keep ping-ponging back and forth. But then sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes you realise actually, like there's bits where like the characters have actually almost progressed and done loads of stuff without you.
Yeah, it's
and it kind of surprises you of being like, oh, but I thought I was going to be there when we turned up there.
Cool.
It's very Game of Thrones. It's almost like Game of Thrones, but a video game doing the same thing and making advantages of the same technique for a different medium.
That's good.
We're hearing about because Game of Thrones, you always hear about characters you've read about. It's like, oh my God, from what I'm reading, I don't know if this character I love is dead or alive. Whereas with Banner Saga, it's very much like, wait, I should have been the leader of that battle. Did they win that battle without me?
And stuff goes on, and there are battles you can't win, and there are things where you have to just like leave, and like it's really
the
cool.
Fighting retreats in that game are so exciting. Again, video games very rarely let you be the commander of a losing army.
Yeah,
and just
it's not perfect.
There's I can't remember what game this was. It was when I was a kid, but it was a war game, and I just spent like months trying to sort out World War One, just trying to make it so that millions of people didn't die, and so that like I'm trying something like the Battle of Verdun, not the Somme, but Verdun, one of the other ones.
One of the one that was worse than the Somme.
Yeah, the Verdun.
Let me just try and sort out
World
War One.
And I'd be sitting there, like, I was like 11, and I'd just be obsessively like, right, how can we make this battle not the worst? And sometimes I just couldn't do it. You know, millions would die, and I'd be like, man. And
those are the really weirdly, those are the really fun decisions in games where it's not like Walking Dead.
And there's no right answer sometimes.
Yeah, Telltale games are often, there's no correct answer. It's what kind of ethical quandary do you want? But often it's not really about making two bad decisions. It's trying to make a good decision in a terrible situation.
Yes, quite.
The nice thing about the Banner Saga is it's just there is like a common foe, and it is people fighting against a common foe, but there's also a lot of political unrest between different groups, and the fact that you control characters from different ones, and you grow attached to all these characters, and it doesn't really make you ever explicitly choose like which side you're going to be on, but you're always leaning one way or another in terms of how you behave and in terms of like how you treat people, and it's this thing of like, you're kind of this weird floating, you do feel like a floating entity of being like, who am I looking after here? And I don't know, it does do some, also the one problem though actually is it ties into the kind of the game element, is the way it has this thing where you can upgrade your characters by leveling them up, and you can buy trinkets for them and make them better, and it has all this stuff, but then because you're constantly changing between characters, and because you have this system where like I can't remember how it works, if either you share the currency, I don't think you do, I think you have separate currencies for different groups.
You do, which is a weird thing, because you buy equipment for a character and then you never use them in a fight again.
And then you buy equipment for a character, then you might not use them for like hours, or like what I ended up doing was I ended up saving up a lot of my currency so I could buy a good piece of equipment, and then the game is over.
Oh god, it's so weird playing Pillars of Eternity now and remembering all the stupid, like all the old muscle memory of stuff I did in Baldur's Gate, like I don't want you in my party, I'm taking your trousers, your sword, and then saying bye. I love doing that in the first Baldur's Gate though, when you meet the evil necromancer and the other dude. The first thing, I always got them to join my party and then went into the customization and made it so they were both wearing bright pink, and then just left them there at the crossroads again, being like, actually, I've changed my mind. And then just left them there standing being evil and ominous in their bright pink outfits. That was the only thing that I always did. I never got much further than that. That game was harder than balls. That's why it was
harder than balls.
Harder than Baldur's Gate. But that seems like a nice time to wrap it up for this week's.
That's good. That means
game palaver.
If we're wrapping it up, I can go home and play more Cities Skylines.
That looks like such a soothing game. Is it soothing?
I tell you what, it's not just soothing. There's a reason everyone's talking about it. It's really, 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 really good.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of really beautiful, soothing gifs of lovely road systems.
Oh man, I
just want to build that.
It's
I want to build lovely roads.
I believe, I don't think I'm wrong in saying that the designer made public transport sims, and like good fun ones, and then they just knocked the city sim out the park, because clearly they're an incredibly talented bunch of people. But you can tell, because actually the most fun thing to do in it, just by coincidence, is traffic, roads, buses, and metros, and trying to solve that problem and going, I'm going to have to bulldoze half my city to get this road planning permission. Sorry, I'm going to evict you from your lovely mansion and just plough it into the ground.
Yeah, I really want to try it because I was
so disappointed by SimCity.
See, I loved SimCity. I'm a sucker. I knew
SimCity 5.
The most recent one, whatever it was, the one that was just SimCity, and everyone hated it, and I quite liked it, and almost got burnt alive for that. But I mean, it wasn't perfect. There were lots of things wrong with it.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the worst game in history, like some people were saying.
I really liked it.
I just got to the edge of my city, and I was like, oh, I can't go anywhere.
In Skylines that happens, but then you can spend money to just buy another similarly sized plot of land in any direction.
Oh, see, that would be nice. That would be nice.
Yeah, I really want to play it. I'm basically at the moment I'm trying to plow through a bunch of video stuff I need to do.
Well, I think it being Paradox publishing it, I think they're going to expand the shit out of it. So I think this is a game where the longer you wait, the more life absorbing it's going to be when you come to it. And I think you'll be able to do a really interesting piece comparing maybe SimCity and this, and talking about why one works and the other doesn't. And the main thing,
that's a really good idea.
Small thing, like it's full of tiny touches, and this is the thing that I didn't know going into it. Anytime you make a change to your city, you get happy faces or frowny faces that appear from the point where you make the change, rippling outwards,
just like real life. Yeah.
As if you just like real life when you remove a bus stop, and then everyone around you frowns.
Just like real life.
But it's huge because it's got that kind of don't be put off by this, but like that kind of like Farmvillian mobile UX design of just I've done something and it feels great. Like when you put down a park. And everyone for about a mile just smiles.
Oh man!
Like that's why it's more.
This sounds like I might just be locked in a room.
Oh dude,
with it
I tweeted
in a more beautiful reality.
I tweeted today that I started playing it and then didn't shower for 2 days. Like to get my work done and play City Skylines, showers went out the window.
Well, that's what I was like with SimCity. I got really into it because I see that I've talked about this in the podcast before, so I'll keep it very brief. But what I did was I finished my city and it was enclosed as much as it could, and that was like, okay, well, this is my nice city with all the education. And I was like, now I'm going to make the city that just mines coal.
Social divisions.
And that's the thing, is I like the way that it emphasised social divisions. And
I think it was a very political game. Yeah.
I think it really was, and that's what I loved about it, is especially living in London, and I was thinking about that a lot of the time because I was living in quite an impoverished area of London, and I really liked the theme of, and I wonder how intentional it was, but I love the theme of there's not enough space, which means where's the shit going to go?
Yeah. Which one of your cities is going to just have a shit time and get taken advantage of by everyone else?
Who's going to live next to the shit? Basically,
who's living next to? Who's Staten Island here? Who's having to sit on top of the giant trash pile? You know?
And I like that idea of being like, no, the real world isn't like Infinite City. You can't just have the beautiful, neat garbage dump over there. That's not how life works.
I find city planning really, really interesting. You know, one of the founders of IGN did his degree in city planning.
I thought you were going to say SimCity.
Because of SimCity, though.
Oh, wow.
Like, he basically did a whole degree in urban planning because of SimCity.
I know a couple of city planners.
Wasn't it? Oh, there was some famous game. Oh, this is a useless anecdote.
Reject.
Jettison it. Thank you for listening to Daft Souls.
Thank you for listening to Daft Souls.
Thank you.
I'm not playing anything until I finish Bloodborne, but then I'm going to check out the bloody city game. But you should check out Cogwatch, which is a video game thing.
You can find that on Rock Paper Shotgun's YouTube channel. Give that a Google, and there's a little playlist for Cogwatch. We've got 4 so far. They're only 6 minutes. Go and listen to me talk very quickly about game mechanics.
They're very good.
It's very good. It really is. I heartily agree.
Because I'm occasionally briefly appear in the background of it. And if you are interested in Bloodborne, do check out my Bloodborne diary system. I know it sounds like a ridiculous thing, but actually they're probably a bit more entertaining than you'd imagine they would be.
If people want to read your articles, where do they go?
They go to kotaku.co.uk.
The UK version of popular
Kotaku.
American site Kotaku.
It's very good. It's almost the same, but there's more British on it.
Sounds good to me.
Nice, yeah.
And finally, this is episode 40 of Daft Souls. I realised today that we've been doing Daft Souls for just over a year now.
Really?
Yeah. And in that time, we have had 500,000 listens.
Wow.
Good Lord.
Which is 500,000, which is incredible for a podcast because nobody listens to podcasts anymore.
I think they do, you know. I think they do.
I listen to a bunch, but then I am old now.
While you're doing your gardening.
Yes, exactly.
We are all old now. This is the way. But no, I just wanted to say thank you very much to all of you who are listening at home because, we have a lot of fun doing it and it's a real pleasure.
That's huge, guys. Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.